what a view. G'day, this is Peter from the Property Club and I'm here in sunny Subic Bay, Philippines. And today I'm going to answer one of my most frequently asked questions, which is, hey Pete, can I own real estate in the Philippines? So I'm going to answer the question, can foreigners own real estate in the Philippines? And the short answer is yes, absolutely foreigners can own. I'm living proof. I own several properties here in the Philippines in my own personal name. So it is definitely possible you can own real estate here in the Philippines. And today we're going to discuss that and the different forms of ownership and the things you can and cannot buy here in the Philippines. Alrighty, well let's talk about the most popular option for foreigners here in the Philippines. Expat foreigners buying property. So the most popular option is to purchase a condominium. So condominiums under Philippine condominium law are able to be purchased by foreigners. Keep in mind there are certain restrictions, and the key restriction is this. The key restriction is a building, one particular building, foreigners can only own a maximum of 40% of that building. 60% of the building needs to be purchased by Filipinos. So what you need to do when purchasing a condominium is do some due diligence. So check with the company, the development company, the administration, what percentage is currently owned by foreigners and what percentage is owned by Filipinos. Because the issue at hand is, if you're buying a resale property and let's say already they've exceeded the quota for the percentage base of foreigners that can buy into that building, you might have issues actually transferring the title at the land department. So make sure you do that before paying any deposit or transferring any money to your vendor. Now, continuing our talk about condominiums, most property that foreigners buy are condominiums, but that doesn't mean that it has to be a condominium. I have seen particular properties that look like townhouses, but actually, most interesting, they're on condominium title. Let's next talk about townhouses. So a lot of townhouses can be on a freehold title. If it's on a freehold title, then you as a foreigner will not be able to purchase that land. Okay, it's not allowed. However, if for example the developer, when they built the property, they applied for those townhouses, could be a two-story walk-up, could be a split level where they're selling the bottom and top level. When they applied for it, it was actually registered as a condominium title. Then actually foreigners are allowed. So I have seen a lot of properties actually in Ortigas, in around the Valle Verde area, whereby yes, indeed they look like townhouses, but in actual fact the title, the piece of paper that you own, actually says condominium title. So those properties foreigners are allowed to purchase. The next thing I want to talk about is house and land. And you might say, hey Pete, hold on a minute. Foreigners are definitely not allowed to own land in the Philippines. And actually, you would be correct in saying so, okay? Foreigners, and let me just clarify this for you. Foreigners are not allowed to buy what's called a freehold title ownership here in the Philippines. However, foreigners can do two things, okay? The first thing they can do is go to places like Clark, Pampanga, or Subic Freeport, where I've chosen to buy. Yes, that's right. This house here, I'm standing on the balcony right now looking out at this amazing view. This is a duplex villa, like I mentioned earlier in the video. So I was legally permitted to purchase this particular property in my own name. Okay, but how was I able to do that? Well, actually, it's not a freehold title. It's what's called a leasehold title. So in China, they have 99-year leases. In the Philippines and certain zones, actually the government, Clark, Pampanga and Subic Freeport, the most common, actually leases these properties directly to foreigners. after the 50-year period, you can actually renew the property. So you will have the first right to go to the land department and say, hey, look, I've been leasing this property for 25 years or 50 years, however long you leased it for, I want to renew. So you can actually renew. You will have a chance to renew, but you just don't know how much the renewal fee will be at that time. No one can predict it. It's just an uncertainty. But what you can be sure of is during the time that you initially leased it, for example, 50 years, you will have absolute control over that property. So you can buy from two sets of people. You can buy from the government directly, from SBMA, for example, here in Subic Freeport. You can go to the land department, you can talk to the land department and ask to purchase a property or a slice of land to build a house here in the Subic Freeport. The other way you can purchase is there's a lot of people that maybe they lived here for a certain number of years and they decided to move on. So they decided to move on and you pick up a resale. When you purchase a resale, it's not the same as getting it from the government directly, because usually what happens is you're not purchasing a direct lease. You're purchasing what's called a sublease. So you'll have an agreement between the vendor, the seller who did the original contract with the government and got the original lease. For example, let's say the original lease was 50 years with the government, okay? You got a 50-year lease, well, the original person did, and then they sell it to you 10 years down the track. So at that time, maybe your sublease is only good for 40 years. So that's actually a sublease, okay? It's not a lease that's directly to the government. So they're the two ways you can actually purchase here in the Freeports. Another thing that I would like to mention is you can actually purchase anywhere in the Philippines. Believe this or not, it could be anywhere. It could be Bohol, it could be your dream to live on the beach in Bohol, but it's not a Freeport. Look, don't be concerned, because you can still purchase, okay? But it's a different system. You would need to hire a solicitor to draft up a contract and purchase a lease from that individual. So let's say this person had a slice of land and they wanted to cut off some land on the beach where you wanted to build your home, and you were thinking about building for retirement purposes. You can lease that from that individual using a contract and then register that contract with the department, the land department, that shows that you have a 50-year right and lease to that individual property. So that's how foreigners are doing it here in the Philippines. Obviously, everyone is different, okay, and it depends on your situation. And I do hear some foreigners coming here, especially they might be new to the Philippines, and they come up with these weird and wonderful ideas. Now, the first three ideas being a condo on condominium title, a townhouse on condominium title, or a leasehold land or house and land on leasehold title, I suggest and recommend. But there are other schemes, I could say, that I would personally say to steer clear and stay away from. So like I was saying, I do see a lot of newbie expats come here and say, oh, look, I can purchase land, I've got a way around it, I've got a good solicitor, and the solicitor is going to set up a company for me. They're going to set up this company, I'm going to own the company, I'm going to own the shares in the company and do it that way. Well, in actual fact, it's not so straightforward, and it might be illegal to do that. So be very, very wary if someone suggests that form of company ownership. The biggest reason I say that is because companies in the Philippines, actually a lot of companies cannot be wholly owned. They can only be wholly owned if they are what's called a WOFI, wholly owned foreign company. But most companies that have the right to own land must be a local Filipino company, which means you need Filipino owners and directors to control that shareholding of the company. So for example, you might need as much as 60% Filipino owned. Now that's a bit of a concern. Another way that I'm hearing that is probably a safer bet is actually to purchase a property using a conduit. So that it could be an individual, it could be a friend or something like that. And then what people are doing is they're issuing a loan. Okay, so they're issuing a loan to that person, and also an agreement saying, hey, look, I'm lending you this money to buy this property on my behalf. Okay, and then they get the right to the property. The problem is, if it ever went to court, okay, if it went to a court, there might be a serious issue, and the court could overturn the loan. This is actually possible because in the Philippines, the law does quite clearly state that foreigners cannot own freehold land. And that's why I've decided to stick with both condominiums and leasehold land to purchase for myself personally. Okay, so that's the options for me. The last and final option for those that do have a Filipina wife, they might want to purchase the property in their wife's name. That is one very good option if you're married and you trust your partner wholeheartedly and you think, hey, this person's not going to rip me off. But look, for asset protection reasons, my suggestion is if you have a child, actually you can put freehold property in your child's name at any age. You don't have to wait till the age of 18. So one really good example is I had a good friend of mine who actually purchased a large plot of land and developed it in his son's name, okay? And on the actual contract, the agreement itself, it states that the guardian of the son is the father, who is a foreigner. So until the age of 18, the father actually has control of that property, okay? He has control of that property and he makes the decisions what will or will not happen with that property. So they're my suggestions for purchasing property in the Philippines. It can most definitely be done, but what I would say is keep it simple. Keep it really simple. Try not to complicate it, and then you're going to be laughing. You're going to be having a great time here in the Philippines, just like me. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and double thumbs up.